Welcome to Creekside Chats with Successful Real Estate Investors, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, promoting prosperity and harmony to help you flourish in all areas of life. Join in as we explore the motivations and goals of real estate investors and how their ability to invest abundantly has provided them with the time and freedom to contribute to the world in a creative and thoughtful way. Now please welcome your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with Successful Multifamily Real Estate Investors. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest is known as the Apartment Queen. She has purchased over $2 million in real estate as key principal. Before transitioning to full-time syndicator, she sold over $3 million in residential real estate. She is co-host on KBGI Radio, The Drive, and she also hosts her own podcast, Number One Leading Ladies, where she interviews kickass women who are disrupting their industry to discover the real story of how they got where they are today. So much more to know about this remarkable woman, so let's get to know Kaylee McMahon.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
Well, let's get to know Kaylee. Talk to us about a formative experience from your childhood. Of course, at the time, you probably didn't think of it that way, but as you think back upon it, you go, yeah, that kind of was a moment in my life that helped form the woman that I am today.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of those little snapshots, you know. One in particular, actually two in particular, I would say, when I was really little, probably 5 or 6, I was going to Disney World, and it was actually the moment that I thought of, like you said, formatively, when I was trying to kind of discover my why and figure out, you know, why am I here on the earth, you know? And it's like, if you think back to when you were a child, what were you really good at, just naturally good at? And that was before you were told you had to be a dentist, a doctor, whatever. And because I want to be a dentist. So that was later. But at that moment, I was on a plane going to Disney World in Florida. And I kind of like left my parents and went and found this random couple on the plane. And I think my parents were looking for me. But they kind of weren't surprised when they found me, because I'm just kind of like leaned over my seat talking to these people like, hey, where are you going? What you doing? What's your name? Who are you? You know, like that's just who I am. And then my grandmother is kind of like my mom. So she has always planted seeds in my head in little moments, but there's been times in college, you know, that's definitely in my past, where she would kind of like sneak me some money so I could go to the movies, or like send me little care packages here and there, you know, which was just really nice, because college for me was extremely stressful and I was very cut off from, you know, my family being away. So that was just stuff I'll remember.
Well, talk to us about what was formative about that experience on the plane as you look back on it. Why do you consider that a formative experience?
Can you maybe define that word for me?
Well, you look back on it. It's a memorable experience for you, and as you look back on it, what does it tell you about yourself?
When I look back in that moment of trying to like close my eyes and envision myself in that moment, it was definitely thinking about, you know, what I was naturally good at. And so at the time, it was kind of actually, what am I like physically good at, which is just talking to people and making friends. And then therefore internally, like under the hood, if you will, like what am I really good at? And it's, I think, understanding like the common human condition, where I take interest in, you know, common struggles that we have, or common successes that we have, or things like that, you know, because and also I love learning from other people's experiences. So I have a lot of older friends that, you know, I mean, they've been doing the commercials thing for 40 years, you know. One of my buddies is like, quit reading your books and call me, you know? So, yeah, I definitely realized I was good at connecting with people through, I guess, our common condition.
Oh, okay. Well, you mentioned that college was difficult for you because you were cut off from your family and friends, and yet you have this ability to make all kinds of friends. So what was difficult really about that college experience?
I went to college when I was 17, and before I went, I mean, it was the weekend right after I graduated from high school. So I graduated a year early, and then bam, that same weekend I graduated, I was gone to school. So I had no time to celebrate with my friends graduating, and it was weird because I was moved into the next class, you know, so it was just an interesting time. You know, it was just change. And then all of a sudden you're in this new place, and it was still in Texas, but it was, you know, a decent drive away from home, 4 or 5 hours. So it was weird. Like, you know, just all of a sudden just being gone, you know, there wasn't any adjustment period. So then kind of going into this new setting of going to school or class immediately, I think we started like that next Monday. I mean, it was, I didn't have any time to have a break. And again, it was learning a new campus, learning new ways of doing things. College is very different than high school. I did take a few advanced placement classes, so it was kind of similar to those, but, you know, just really with the reorienting yourself on this giant campus. I went to Texas A&M University, so it's huge. Trying to figure all that out. So, you know, your map, like where am I today? I have no idea. Like the bus system. I mean, it's just a lot of change all at once. And so I had also had a long-term boyfriend when I went to college, who we dated for like 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And he was in South Carolina. Anyway, basically the month before moving to school, we broke up. So again, it was just a ton of change all at once. So that was a lot, you know.
No kidding, yeah. So you went to school just immediately right after graduating. So did you graduate in the regular time in May, and so you were going to summer school? Was that the deal?
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't have that typical fall orientation that most freshmen go through.
No, we had it was kind of backwards. It was interesting because we have, so at A&M, there's a thing called fish camp that you do as a freshman, and they put you on buses and ship you off to this, like, I think it's in Tyler, Texas, or East Texas somewhere. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't remember, but everybody basically gets indoctrinated to all of the new traditions that you're going to be using at all the football games, and are just why they're important to the university. So I went to school first. Like, I went to summer school, and so it was kind of cool because it's a little slower pace during the summertime, and most of my classes were kind of all in like one area. They weren't necessarily on West Campus, so it wasn't that bad in retrospect. But, you know, going from like a little high school where it's like 2 hallways, you know, to that, it's different. But whenever I went there, it was like I went to school for, I think, a summer semester, and then I had my new student orientation like somewhere in there. And so I was like, well, I don't even need this. I don't care. But I did need it, actually. Well, sort of, because I thought I knew 100%, like everyone at that age, they're young and dumb or whatever. You think you know what you want to do for the rest of your life. Like, you have no clue. But I picked something, and that was what I for sure had picked. And it was basically pre-medical sciences to go to dental school. So I was like, I don't need this orientation. And I wish I would have participated a little bit more to understand what all careers are out there, to at least, and I don't know if they did like a personality test or an aptitude test or anything like that. I love those now when I hire people. Not all the time, but they're helpful. But anyway, so I kind of just skipped that process.
Well, talk to us a little bit about a major fork in your road that has made all the difference for you. There's
a lot. And if you are somebody like me who wants to constantly grow, there's always going to be forks in the road. You're never going to have one path, if you will. So, I mean, there's been major moments in my life where, you know, like a huge one for me then was in my early 20s, where I got out of college and tried to kind of, okay, I guess I'll go back to kind of my hometown or somewhere nearby and get a job there, and just realizing that my parents were not supportive of who I was as a individual, that I am opinionated and I, you know, stand for justice, and I couldn't put that to words at the time, but, you know, there's just certain traits that I have that are very different than them, and instead of loving and embracing me, they kind of would give me the middle finger when I come home. So I'm like, okay, well, then I'm not coming home. So I kind of had to start over again and kind of start my own life. And it was, again, a major fork in the road. And it stayed that way since. So I've been through the years, last I'd say 6 years or so, trying to figure out, you know, I know that sometimes people say that you're lucky, you know, that you can have friends that are like more than your family, or, you know, love isn't necessarily just going to come from your blood family. So it took me years of starting to work on myself and work on a lot of the trauma that I'd been through and uncover things and realize a lot of patterns that I had and behaviors that I was just because it's all I knew, to work on that, to then start getting the right people into my life. It's taken that self-work to attract the right people. So now I'm at a place where I literally can look around me, and it makes it also very clear when, like, I do have a big thorn in my side right now, and that person, they're leaving very quickly here. It's going to be, you're divorced, you're gone. So, everybody else is very supportive of who I want to be, my long-term goals, how I don't really hold back my thoughts or feelings. I just say them. I'm a big lover of all people, regardless. I mean, until they mistreat me. But anyway, just they're all supportive of who I am and the growth that I want, so I'll never stop growing. So I'm going to probably continue to have those forks in the road. And like I mentioned, right now, because you have those good people around you, it makes it very clear when that next fork needs to happen, because you'll kind of go to them for counsel a little bit. You're like, well, have you dealt with this before? Like I mentioned, a lot of my friends are older. And so something that I could toil with and kind of be on the fence about and be not sure, then I go to them and, you hear something several times and you're like, okay, it's hard. It's time to cut hard and fast. They've done it before. I don't need to do this by myself. And then I also have their support too. So there's been a situation, recently where, also because of the lockdown and COVID and all this stuff, you really see people's true character and who they really are when things get tough, when things get difficult. And it's been very revealing to me that the people that, like I mentioned, there are handfuls of people in my life now that they're soldiers, you know what I mean? Just like me, we're here to figure out problems, not cause problems. We're solution focused. We want to support each other in our own family lives, our own wants and needs and futures. And we're understanding. We understand people aren't perfect and we still love other people. So again, it's made it very clear. I'm having a get together at the end of the month at my buddy's ranch. I want everybody to kind of come together because we're all so separated right now, to be able to, it'll be like 10 people, but, and maybe some of their wives, something like that. But just to really, like, these people are like gold to me now. Like, I've realized I'm so good at making new relationships. I'm so good at hunting, if you will, that I've never taken the time to slow down. And because of having, I had an experience in Spain last summer where I met somebody who kind of said this to me. It's almost like a premonition. Like, I already knew that a lot of the things that are happening now were going to happen. It's kind of crazy. But just kind of having that in the back of my mind, thinking to myself that, okay, that is an option. And now I've kind of been forced to slow down. I normally do, like, I'll take myself on a vacation once a year and like just go away by myself for a couple of weeks. And I come back very clear after reading and journaling and, who in my life is good, who's using me, but honestly, like, with all this COVID stuff, it's made it very apparent, so another fork in the road, when things get tough.
Where did you grow up? What was the town you came from?
I've kind of been all over, but I'd say the most time I've spent's been in Oregon, Washington, and then here.
Oh, okay. No, you were just saying you went back to a small town in Texas. I was just wondering where the small
McKinney.
town was.
It's not that small,
McKinney.
but
yeah. And sort of the Dallas-Fort Worth area there.
Yeah.
But okay. But it's Texas. Yeah. Okay. But you still live in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm in Dallas right now. I'm about 7 minutes from the airport.
Oh, okay. So you're between Dallas and Fort Worth.
I'm at Love Field, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, Love Field. Oh, okay. So you're right in the heart of Dallas then. Yeah. Okay. So some big forks in the road, finding yourself. Talk a little bit about that journey of actually, that process of actually going back home and finding that home sweet home was not home sweet home, because home sweet home did not support Kaylee, who Kaylee really is.
Yeah, so
if it's not too personal.
Oh, it is, but I don't care. I mean, I'm really someone that's gonna give a rip. I'm like, if you don't like me, you don't like me, and you can go away. Like it doesn't bother me at all. So, and again, being like who I truly am and being consistent is so important to me that even if it makes people uncomfortable, okay, well, you're just not my people. That's fine, And and let them choose me too. So when I went back home, it was actually the college experience throughout the years. I was there for 4 years. So I graduated on time, but during that time, I would try to kind of come home, come back to school. And so I would then start working summers. And so during then holidays and summers and things like that, I'd go to my friends' houses for their birthdays Christmases and things like that. So it kind of started then. And when you see that, you see a different environment. So another big part of my why and purpose is because there was a lot of toxic codependency that I grew up in, and you only know what you know. Like, you're not from the outside looking in, you're the inside looking out. So you only know one reality. It's impossible to know somebody else's reality. But when you're like put in their shoes, if you will, at their house or in their life, and kind of you see a different reality, and you kind of compare that to what you know, and you're like, oh, either bad or good or indifferent, And for me, it was very different, and it was uncomfortable actually at first, because a lot of people, especially when you're in Texas, and I'm from like West Coast, where everyone's like, yeah, cool, man, whatever, and then here they're like, okay, it's black and white. And so I, as a person, am somewhere in between. I'm financially conservative and fiscally conservative and socially liberal. So I'm kind of like in the middle. But people, would hear about my family and the way they treated me and things I'd gone through, and it would just kind of like blow their mind. They're like, what? Like, okay, you're always welcome here. So I kind of always have a couple of different homes away from home, if you will, that I'm always kind of welcome to show up in my pajamas and eat stuff out of their pantry. Like, they're good friends to me. But yeah, just being able to discover just different ways of other people's lives and their families. So I could kind of figure out, okay, do I really want this? And the ways that, girls had, or women had relationship with their fathers totally different than mine. I was adopted when I was young, and so I never knew my bio dad until about 3 years ago. So that was another experience. Again, you're always learning. Life's always changing. So it was hard at first. I mean, it probably, I would say, took me about 2 years, because at that point I was financially independent and didn't really need them to support me in any kind of financial way. So it also helps you to kind of think differently too. Like, you're not being protective of anything. It's like, this is voluntary, and I'm here if I want to be, or if they want me here. So it was hard for about 2 years, where I, like I said, had to realize that first Thanksgiving by myself, first Christmas by myself. So then I started connecting with other people. But then after about 2 years, then I realized being around these other people, and then looking at the personal growth that I had in that time, getting out of a place where I'm no longer going to the lake and partying anymore. I'm no longer, doing drugs. I'm no longer doing anything that is going to numb me from anything. I'm fully alive, fully awake, and aware. And so I'm not like covering anything up, So again, that's the reason why it's really important to me to be consistent and open and honest, because it keeps me accountable. And I think a lot of people that do things like I was, there's a reason. There's some deep pain. There's some stuff that you got to deal with, and it's hard, and it takes work. It really does take work to learn how to have inner peace, meditate, learn how to deal with your own skeletons, but once you do, then you can kind of like wipe the slate clean and move forward. So no matter who I know, I'm always radically transparent, if you will. And some people don't take that well, where I'm like, hey, I screwed up. I did this, and I'm just going to tell you, So for me, with future partners and things like that, I literally, first thing I'll be like, here's the worst mistake I've ever made. You know what I mean? Because I'm not perfect, and I don't want to partner with people that think you have to be, or they have no grace, So it was a learning experience, but you get through it.
Interesting life, Kaylee. We could spend hours talking about that. We're coming to the end of our time here together. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and the kickass women that you talk to on the show.
Yeah, so we have a variety of ladies that are on that show. So at first, because my network was a lot of women that are in multifamily, whether they're lenders, brokers, other partners that I've partnered with, and there are not a lot of female principals. And so I've tried to get the ones that are out there on the show. Not everyone's been able to. But, just kind of seeing a different experience. I've had a woman on there that has an ice cream shop that she opened in Dallas. And I think next week we're going to, or is it the week after, I've got a gal that's, she's a hedge fund manager. And so, I really want women that are, or whoever is listening to the show, to see that, like, we'll talk about the real struggles that it takes to be an entrepreneur. And honestly, there's only a handful of ladies that have really dove into, from a female's perspective, why it's difficult. Because both of us, men and women, I think we're both in that position where when you start a company, it's like, okay, well, what am I going to take a loan out on a credit card? I'm going to live with my parents. I'm going to, do whatever it takes to get this thing up and running, jump off this cliff and just make the change. Mm-hmm. But then there's the different part of who we are as men and women and why it's different. And so recently, Brooke Jackson, she did a great interview on there where she talked about the balancing of being a professional and being in real estate and COVID and having kids, so, and I think she is an awesome mother. And so that was actually really great to have her on there, because everyone's always in a different phase of where they're at. Like, are you starting? Are you struggling still? Have you gotten past that? All of us change constantly, but she's kind of put some really good practices in place and has a pretty good amount of at least balance with her family, where she cuts off the phone at 5. She makes boundaries and treats her family like they're important. So as women, we have a little bit different perspective on things. So that show's great, and it's #1 Leading Ladies. It's on Apple, or is it just Apple Podcasts? Yeah, Apple Podcasts or iTunes, Spreaker. It's also on Spotify and Google Podcasts, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we go, just tell the folks how else can people get in touch with you besides just following you on your podcast?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, www.theapartmentqueen.com, there's a ton of content. We've got tabs at the top if you go down, and there's a lot of there's resources for investors. So you can look at videos that explain, like, from the beginning, what is passive investing, all the way through. We've got an underwriting spreadsheet if you're ready to kind of rock and roll and you want to even be involved as a partner, just trying to give some base level of education and knowledge. And also my YouTube channel, if you just YouTube Kaylee McMahon, MCMAHON, and there's a bunch of stuff that'll pop up. All the interviews that I've done on my podcast are also in video form. So if you like that better, it's just a good way to connect and kind of keep up with what we're doing.
Kaylee, it has been a delight.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it.
Enlightened investors, to spearhead your life to time freedom to live abundantly, head over to steedtalker.com and pick up your free guide to passive real estate investing. Also, please take a moment and go to Apple Podcast and leave us a 5-star review. Your review will help us immensely to spread the stories of successful real estate investors whose lives inspire others to passively invest in real estate to live a life of time freedom, to live more abundantly in all areas of life. Enlightened investors, prosperous trails to you until we meet again.
Thank you for joining us on Creekside Chats with Successful Real Estate Investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. For more information, as well as access to our free ebook on enhancing your well-being through real estate investing, be sure to connect with us at steedtalker.com. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine and enhance the humane treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. Connect with us at steedtalker.com.